We now have our custom CSV handler working within the ASP.NET development server. And as you saw, I was just running this inside of Visual Studio and launching it. And the only association we had to make to get that to work was to register the CSV handler inside of the HTTP handler section of web.config. Now, what I wanted to show you next is how you would actually deploy this to IIS. And again, this is going to differ depending on which version of IIS you're deploying to. We're going to start right now by showing you how to deploy to IIS 6, or the equivalent of it. And later we will discuss deploying to IIS 7, because that again is a little bit different. So let's go ahead and put a virtual directory. Let's put an IIS application on top of the pipeline demos directory, which is where this is currently living. So I'm going to add a new application, call it pipeline demos, and I'm going to change the app pool just so that I can show you what it looks like to deploy to IIS 6 instead of IIS 7. So what I'm doing is running IIS 7 in classic pipeline mode, which means that it goes through the ISAPI filters before it dispatches onto ASP.NET. So it behaves much closer to the way that IIS 6 behaves. And for the physical path, I'm going to drop it onto our pipeline demos directory, which is where my application is. Okay, so let's go ahead and start there. Now, what I thought I would show you to begin with is how it will not work just deploying as I just did. So if I go ahead and browse my default .aspx page here from within IIS and click on this link for data.csv, notice we get a 404. And we're getting that because CSV is not a recognized extension by IIS, so it's not going to dispatch it onto our handler. So what you have to do in IIS 6, or IIS 7 if you're running in the compatibility mode for the pipeline, is go add another handler mapping down here. And what you want to do is add a handler mapping that's very much like the ASP.NET handler mappings. So in this example, actually let me close this out and restart it again so we get the right mapping interface here. So I'm going to bring that site up, bring the application, HTTP pipeline demos, go to the handler mappings, and notice ASPX now is mapped onto ASP.NET ISAPI DLL. So that's the same mapping that I need to create. I need to create a mapping between .csv, or in fact data.csv if I want to be that specific, and this ISAPI DLL so that it gets mapped over to ASP.NET. So let's go ahead and add a script map, and the request path, let's go ahead and make it specific to data.csv, and the executable is going to be the same executable as ASPX files have. And let's just call this a custom CSV handler. And that will add a script map entry for CSV. And because we're mapping it onto the ISAPI extension for ASP.NET, it will get over to ASP.NET, and that will allow ASP.NET to kick in our custom data.csv handler here. So let's go ahead and try running the page again inside of IIS. And this time when we click on data.csv, notice I get prompted with the CSV download again, so it got mapped onto ASP.NET, and we get our same little Excel-style interface for the data. So keep that in mind if you're deploying to IIS 6 or IIS 7 in compatibility mode for the pipeline. You're going to have to map any custom extension onto ASP.NET's ISAPI DLL before any of your custom handlers are going to be properly invoked.